everyone's lips at the moment. That is ENIC and Daniel Levy. I mean, Crackers, you've been very vocal about it very recently. Lee, I've seen what you've been saying on the matter as well. But we'll start with you on this one, Lee. Is Daniel Levy's position now completely untenable?
Well, like I said before, I mean, it's a brilliant question. Like I said before, I've been very tolerant of there. I think that, and I still stand by what I say, I think that off the field, the commercial aspect of what they've done has been excellent. I think it's been very, very good. Even today, the commercial deals of revenue generating. The problem has always been the footballing side. History doesn't lie. 23 years, one trophy during that period of time. 14, 15 managers. If you look at the interim managers that are coming through, abysmal decision after abysmal decision, and putting the club into the ESL, the furlough situation that the board and the chairman Daniel Levy took upon themselves beforehand. You look at the situation with before the stadium came, whether or not it was it was a ruse to get the planning permission, who knows? But at one point we might have been going to play where West Ham are at the Olympic Stadium. So there's a lot of terrible, bizarre decisions that have come out from this ownership. And you have to say that, like I say, I've been very tolerable, but you have to say that if things don't change, and this is what I keep calling for change, a lot of people batter me they won't change, maybe they won't, but for my sins, I'm willing to give them the opportunity to change, because I want them to change, because I need the footballing side to change. And Scott Munn, like, again, we don't know Scott Munn, it might not be everybody's cup of tea, but we want the footballing decisions to change. The club have appointed a chief footballing officer, but we want the footballing decisions to change, or we want the club to be more humble. The club start to own some of their, or start to be a little bit accountable for making certain decisions or whatever it might be. But I think that if they're not going to change, this is the perfect moment, Ben, a sliding doors moment for them to come out and say, we've made some massive mistakes. This is our vision and this is our plan, and we want to engage with the fans, the community, to get our Tottenham back. And if they can't or won't do that, then I think it's time for them to step aside. So to answer the question directly, is it untenable? I think for a lot of Spurs fans, yes. For some, no. But I think that if they don't make a statement of culture and change and DNA, then yes, it is time for them to move on. And they've had a fantastic run, but it's time to pass the baton, the custodianship, if you like, of this fantastic football club. It's time to move on to something new and something different. How we get there, Ben, I don't know. It's a 3 billion, 2.5 billion, 4 billion, whatever you want to say. Somebody's not just queuing up to get that, but that doesn't need an excuse. The board need to take accountability for where they are. And the thing that they can clearly do, the quick wins, the low-hanging fruit, whatever cliche you want to say, could have easily been Maurizio Pochettino. It could have easily come out and said, we've made mistakes, we're going to reappoint, this is where we're going to go, this is our journey, this is the culture of the football club we want to be. They haven't done any of that. Maybe there's a shoot of that today. Maybe it's just PR, the fans forum that they're doing and that sort of stuff, the paying of the of the reimbursement of the tickets for Newcastle. But for a lot of people, it's already gone. That ship has sailed, and it's time to move on. Absolutely. So if something doesn't change in this sliding doors moment, how I see it, then yeah, I think Daniel Levy needs to say, do you know what? Thanks for your time. I'm off, and move on from the football club.
Yeah, to be honest, I'm well past that, to be honest, because like when you're looking at it, first 10 years, yeah, I think you're being very generous, to be honest. And first 10 years under ENIC and under Daniel Levy, you could give them a pass, and I think that they definitely brought the club on a long way in those first 10 years at the custodian of Spurs. But I think since then, they just haven't kicked on the club anywhere. I mean, they can get us to a certain level, getting us into the top four, but are they fit for purpose for taking us any further than that? I think definitely not. And I just can't see a way where his job is tenable anymore here at this football club. And what are you feeling about it, Crackers?
I tend to be more to your side of this argument, Ben. If I'm honest, I think it was a case of you could see the football side of this club beginning to slide away. I think they've built something with this new stadium now that they've bitten off more than they can chew, to be honest. And I don't think that they've actually got the skill set to now run this whole operation. I mean, we're kind of like a catering trailer that done really good chips and then built this stadium and said, right, okay, we're going to start adding fish to this. And they've gone away. And while they're perfecting the fish recipe and cooking that to perfection, the chips are burning, like the chip pan's on fire. The footballing chip pan is absolutely on fire now. So, you know, they've gone away, but that's their skill set. Their skill set is that commercial side, that building. This is where they come from. That's more finance, bricks and mortar, getting things done. I don't think they're people person as businessmen. They're not. That's not really in their skill set. So, look, if they was to split the board now, and Daniel runs away with Donna and goes on and carries on doing all the commercial things, fine. I've got no problem with that because they're actually really very good at it. And they've done amazing things with community programs. I'll gloss over the fact they did want to take us to Stratford 10 years ago. And now all of a sudden they care deeply about Tottenham. But we'll forgive them that for the moment. They've done fantastic things with the community, the college, all sorts of things in the peripherals around the club. But the football side is a clown's car on fire. Now, if they split the board and get football people involved to run the football and don't meddle, give them autonomy, don't micromanage, then there's a small glimmer of a chance for them to actually get this back and start to get people back on side. But I do think, like the plane, when it hits 180 miles an hour up a runway, even if the engine's on fire, it's taking off. And I get the feeling we are at the end of the runway with them and we're going into the air with the engines on fire with them. I think
it is hard to argue that. It is hard to debate that.
I can't see them changing enough to actually pull this back now. It's too far up the runway for me. And I think, you know, Enoch going and Daniel Levy going are two very, very different things. And I want to include Donna Cullen in this as well, because you know, Daniel gets a lot of hate. There's a lot of decisions come from her as well as other people on that board. So look, Enoch going, okay, you can on principle call for them to go and find somebody with 5 billion quid. And then they'll go. That's a reality. You might not like it. That's a reality. Daniel Levy going, he absolutely can go because you can just get another chairman with some fresh eyes on it. Football is cyclic, isn't it? You don't want to play at a club too long. You don't want to manage at a club too long. You have to have a churn. You have to have a refresh. You have to have fresh thinking, fresh voices to keep pushing you on. That applies to chairmen of clubs as well. So at some stage, these 20 failures of managers have to be his fault at some stage. You know, the other day when he said, this is absolutely on me and I'm fully responsible. So as punishment, I'm going to sack Christian Stellini. That's basically what his statement said. He said, I take full responsibility, so I'm sacking Christian Stellini. There you go. And that is in a nutshell. He has to see his own shortcomings. He really does. And if he is a Tottenham fan like he claims to be, truly a Tottenham fan, if you're failing the club that much, you would fall on your sword. You would do the honourable thing. You know, no matter how much it hurts you financially, I don't think he's ever going to worry about paying the electric bill like a lot of people are. I think you'd step aside for the good of the club you claim to love.
Crackers, you're right, he did take accountability for the first time in that statement. But I mean, it's taken him 22 years to do that with many, many wrong decisions week in, week out, year in, year out. I mean, do you think that was just a bit of lip service, or do you actually believe he genuinely believed that?
That's a tough one. You'd have to live inside Daniel's head to get the true answer to that. Given the way this club's operated for 22 years, him coming out the other day, the players refunding tickets today, the announcement of the fan member on the board, etc., all coming out today would point me to the cynical side of it, saying, oh no, Thursday night, this is going to be absolutely terrible. What can we do? What can we announce to try and knock some edges off of those boos on Thursday night? I'd love to be wrong, and I'd love to say that they are genuinely sorry and they genuinely want this and genuinely want that. But after 22 years of, you know, what we've been served up from them and the silent arrogance of them when things have gone wrong before, excuse my cynicism. And I think that's all I'd say on that. Excuse my cynicism of these announcements.
Sim, what are you feeling on the situation? Because, you know, Cracker spoke about a potential way that maybe Levy and ENIC can get fans back on board. Do you feel like it's too far gone for that?
For a lot of fans, 100% is too far gone. When it's 22 years, within those 22 years, there's going to be countless opportunities for them to have gotten a lot of fans on side. But with each wrong decision, they're alienating more and more fans. And I think those wrong decisions, especially in the last 4 years, have completely accelerated. And now we're in a position where we're as Cracker said, as Cracker said, we're completely on fire on the footballing side. I think the footballing landscape has changed so much since they took over in 2001. I feel like they're failing to keep up with the landscape of football. How teams are now developing philosophies within football clubs. They're much more strategic. It's not just about appointing big names and just hoping everything falls into place. It's about having a plan. It's about executing it. It's about getting the right people in place. What's called from the recruitment side, I feel like this board and the hierarchy, I've said this before, when we're talking about signing players, I always feel like it's not about looking at our team and saying, okay, what player are we going to sign to fit each role in the team, and strategically going through and having a plan. It's like what we do is we look at who's on the market and say, what's a good deal? Who can we sign for? Who's available for the money? Who's a good name? That's all we do. We don't strategically look at players to fit the team. We just sign players and try and fit them into the team. That's essentially what we do. And I think it's the fans are sick and tired at this point after 22 years of this hierarchy, and I think there's more and more fans who are starting to want their voices heard. I was listening to Levy's Cambridge Union interview last week, and I was listening to him speak, and he was asked about trophies and stuff. And the Spurs is trophies a priority for him? He said, look, it's a journey. Of course, we're still on that journey, and we want to win trophies, and hopefully trophies are at the end of the journey. And I was just sitting there thinking, after 22 years, how can you keep talking about a journey? It's 22 years. At what point do you have to accept it's not a journey anymore, and this is just what you are? This is just who the hierarchy are, and they're not going to change after 22 years. And whenever things get too bad, there's always a big PR spin. They'll sack the manager, they'll appoint Paratici, they'll appoint Scott Munn, they'll try to take pressure on themselves. But at the end of the day, when all is said and done, nothing seems to change. Everyone's in the same position. Each manager comes in and has complaints about the board. And at the end of their tenures, we have the fans on the manager's back saying they have to do this, they have to do that. But it's the same with every manager. It happens every single time. They all have the same complaints, and the board, at the end of the day, once they sack the manager, they're getting off scot-free because a new manager will come in, and all of a sudden the fans get behind them, and the same cycle begins. They need to be held accountable from the fans' voice, and their fans should, if they believe, if they are displeased and they do believe that they're not happy with the footballing side, they should voice that. They should be saying that ENIC are not doing a good enough job, because that is what's going to put pressure on the board. It's going to be the fans using their voices. And I can't, if you look at the direction this club is going, what is Levy's plan from a footballing standpoint? He's got loads of plans off the pitch. He's got rugby coming in. He's got F1. He's got Beyonce. He's got hotel. He's got all these plans. And you know what? And you've got all these plans. And what do we hear about these plans? No expense spared. We'll spend all the money you want on these new investments, on these new things that they want to bring to Tottenham. everything is like no expense spared, but when it comes to on the pitch, there's no strategy, there's no plan. It's like football isn't a priority. It's not a priority
at this football club.
Yeah, that's what it feels like anyway, and for sure, because it feels like they're more interested in all the other things that they're guaranteed to make money, whereas in football it's like, well, we have to do things right to get in the Champions League or win the league, win trophies. You have to make strategic things. They know that all they have to do is put on a concert, and that's guaranteed money. They don't have to make sure they're spending money on the right centre back to make money on a concert. You know what I mean? They just get Beyonce in
the
there.
application in to get that extra date for
Yeah,
Beyonce.
The other thing to that, Sim, Ben, and everybody is, look, the stadium opened, told it was a game changer. Along came COVID. It came along for everybody, but it obviously came at a really bad time. I mean, on a financial footing front for Tottenham. It came at a bad time for everybody, but, you know, keeping it just in the Tottenham context. So if it is a case of we need to be getting these, you know, Beyonce on ice in go-karts at the stadium, a monster truck, NFL, rugby racing, whatever it is, tell the fans, say, look, we are doing these things and the money will feed into supporting the football club. It will go into supporting Tottenham Hotspur Football Club, but this will take time. He's kind of said these things, but he tucks it away in interviews at Cambridge Uni, or like somebody from the Financial Times, or, you know, it will be an Open University program at 3:00 in the morning, or he'll speak to Professor like Smith from the Botswana business development stuff. He speaks to, go and speak to somebody from like newspapers at the Butcher Builder and Candlestick Maker, reads that at the cafe in the morning before he goes off to work. Go and tell those people, you know, just go to them and say, look, we are doing these things so that we can feed into the football club. I guarantee you it. But just say it in the right places. Don't go running off to the university and speaking to a few business people, or speaking to like North Korean TV, like the club's own TV channel, where you're going to get a real mauling off of like the questions that you wrote yourself.
Yeah.
We're not stupid, you know. Come out and speak to people that have got platforms. Don't do an interview with somebody like Henry Winter, or speak to Martin Lipton or Martin Samuel, or go on to Talk Sport, or an interview with BBC Match of the Day.
Come on here.
Well, yeah, but
come on here.
The moment any of us say "come on here," oh, you're just doing it to get yourself like.
We'll turn into happy clappers overnight.
Exactly. You're on the payroll of the club, mate.
Yeah, their comms, their public-facing comms have got to be so much better. They really have, and they could knock off a lot of this vacuum of toxicity if they was to do that. Just speak to the fans a bit better.
Yeah, well, Levy did that, didn't he? A couple of years ago, after we sacked Mourinho, he said, "You know, we want to get the Spurs DNA back," and he did this whole thing. Nuno. And then he didn't. Nothing came to pass. So I think that also is something that's lost trust a lot from the fans. When we do hear from him, it just seems to be half truths, a lot of things that no specifics, kind of things that he doesn't live up to. And then and crackers, when you talk about him, you know, committing to spending money from other investments, I think that would be a good thing. But the problem is, at the moment, we have been spending money, but it's been spent all completely wrong, it seems, at the moment. And do I trust him with the money? Do we trust him with the money? A lot of fans have given up on trusting him with money as well. Exactly. And and so everywhere you look, it's like I'm looking for something which, at the moment, about this club, how it's being run on the footballing side, like something positive, and I'm struggling to find any at the moment.
Yeah, look,
that feeds into Lee's point about having best in class when you're appointing directors, and you know, the football director and the finance director and the operations director and the medical team and you got to go out and get best in class. You have to do that, but I think you have to know what that looks like.
if they had the level of detail that they'd put into the off the field, off the footballing decisions, the level of detail, crushed aggregate in the stadium floor, crests put out, so it is magnificent. If they had the level of detail like that on the footballing side, we'd be one of the best in Europe, if not already. And this is the frustrating things. I'm not saying we should, Levy's doing a fantastic job at all. What I'm saying is that they have clearly some brilliant skill sets that they're good at and some that they're not good at. So either get best in class in people that they are good at. So the best way to be successful, be elite, is to have good people around you. You should never be the most. I have board meetings. I have board meetings every month. I've run 3 businesses. I've been a managing director of a massive corporate organisation. I don't want to be the most cleverest person. By the way, I'll never be the most cleverest person. But I don't want to be the most cleverest person in the boardroom. I have people around me to do that stuff. And the recruitment of the people around you, it's a team effort. And it just feels like that they just don't have the right people around them. Yes, they have the right people around them off footballing matters, off governance, off finance, off bricks and mortar, as Cracker said, but they don't have the right people around them footballing decisions. And I know that we haven't come on to this yet, but all them years ago when Sol Campbell did what Sol Campbell did, Daniel Levy publicly came out and said this will never happen again. Yet we've now got one of our own, Kane, coming to the final year of his contract, and in a year's time, if he doesn't sign, he can walk wherever he wants. And I'm not saying Kane's going to go to Arsenal, but he could go wherever he wants. He can go and join Poch at Chelsea to finish off to finish all of us off, essentially. And that will be as bad. The culpability, the accountability of these decisions, these recruitment decisions, has to be.
We crashed. Have we crashed, Queever? No, Crackers is still there.
I think Lee's crashed.
Yeah, I think just Lee.
Back now? No,
all back, all good.
Go on, Lee, you were stopped mid-flow.
Oh, sorry, but sorry, I've just had a connection issue there. So, I was saying, look, it has to be culpable, these decisions, these recruitment decisions at each level. It starts from the top, and that is Daniel Levy. We can't keep making these terrible footballing decisions, these recruitment decisions across the board. When you look at the history of the football club, it is about making decisions, and some of them go well. Look, all people make bad decisions, and all people make good decisions. Right? All make mistakes. No one's perfect, but the reality is that the decision making on the footballing side, from the bad decision making on the footballing side, far outweighs the good decision making on the footballing side, and that's why we are where we are. There'll be other fans of football clubs that go, "What are you moaning about, guys? You're 5th in the Premier League. You're just outside." But from where we are and where we should be and where we want to be, it comes back down to we don't know what we want as a club, as a collective. That communication, that culture, that vision has to happen now. Is the perfect time to come out. And if you don't come out and give us and set us the vision, then walk away and give it up to somebody else. It's somebody else's turn.
We seem to have another problem at the moment as well, is that everyone in terms of the football world seems to be waking up a bit. I've never seen as many critical articles of Daniel Levy as I've seen over the last few weeks from people like Henry Winter. The Athletic have been being very, very critical of Daniel Levy, whereas maybe a few years ago, everyone was praising him for the way he's running the club and his tight ship, and now everyone's starting to wake up. And not just them, it seems to be something that other managers are seeming to wake up to now, since post Conte and Mourinho as well. How many managers rejected us 2 years ago? All of a sudden this time round, it seems as though there's a lot of reservations from a lot of different managers about coming to join Tottenham. And maybe the bad footballing decisions over the last few years or 20 years are starting to now come to a head, where there's a lot of good people who we could get who are being put off by how the club is being run from a football strategic point of view.
Yeah, and that's a culmination of bad kind of decisions Daniel has taken. I mean, since hiring Pochettino, I genuinely believe, I don't think he's made one correct major decision on the footballing side since hiring Pochettino. And that's crazy for someone to stay in a role for that long when you're making bad decision after bad decision after bad decision. And now we're a club where we have to convince managers to come here, as opposed to managers trying to convince us that they're the right man for us to take on. And that's a massive problem. But Lee, what were you about to say?
I was sorry. I don't know. You still got me. So my Wi-Fi is pretty bad here. But I was going to say that when you look at you talk about some of them managing decisions. You might look at it and say, well, hang on, he got Conte in, but he got Conte as a win now manager, but then didn't give the win now manager the win now tools or the win now players. We got Jose Mourinho. Wow, serial winner. We've got Jose. Yeah, but you didn't give Jose Mourinho the win now players. We wanted Skriniar. You got Roden. Harry Redknapp all them years ago. He wanted quality centre back. He ended up getting Ryan Nielsen with the greatest respect. It happened time and time again. So, and I want to make my position clear on the footballing side. It is absolutely abysmal them decisions, and that's what needs to change. And if the board, if Daniel Levy is not willing to change that, then it is time for them to move on. But that is harder than it's easy to say. Do you know what I mean? It's like there's not about 4 or 5 people queuing up for 4 or 5 billion quid to take over Tottenham. Although there has been talks with we allegedly with QSI and all that sort of stuff as a part investment. I was saying to Crackers in the week when we was on the phone that it might be that a QSI might come in and put 30%, £1 billion in, for example, and that might not give them, overall control. But believe you me, a 30% stake in a business, £1 billion stake in a business, definitely gives you a voice. If that starts changing the voice in the boardroom to more footballing side, then that will be a huge start. But like I say, who's queuing up to get into through the door, Ben?
On the flip side of that, though, Ben, Sim and Lee, if the fans put enough pressure on the club and make it unbearable, which is in principle what a lot of them are asking for, that 5 billion, someone will buy it for 4.2. If it's cheap enough, they will go. So, I mean, there is some validity, to be fair, to people that do want them out, to make it so intolerable that they fire sale it just to get out of it.
Can I just say on that, this is the thing when you look at it from a financial or business perspective. You look at Newcastle, very, very attractive, 300 million quid, massive stadium in terms of where they can renovate, the work to be done, the project work to be done. They can throw some money at some players and whatever and start to build like they've been doing. They can get into the Champions League and all of a sudden they're rock and rolling. 300 million still. You got to put 3 billion down to even get in a conversation with Tottenham, and that's really difficult. You look at Manchester United, one of the biggest clubs in the world. Yeah, they might go 4 or 5 billion, but come on, they're not Tottenham Hotspur, are they? And that's why sometimes you've got to look at the financial generation and go, actually, they're generating money. The commercial side, they're generating money. A potential buyer is going to look at that and think, well, that's good. That's where the valuation comes from. But the opportunity at Newcastle for 300 million quid is more attractive, isn't it, than a 3 billion? But stadium's done, don't need to do anything. Training ground's done. That might be a benefit. All you've got to do is sit back and watch the money roll in. But actually, if you're an investor, you want to buy small and then see your investment grow, don't you? How far is a 3 billion investment going to grow? It will grow, but will it grow as big as what Newcastle could grow? I've only paid 300 million out. I'm going to get that to a £3 billion valuation. I've paid 3 billion out. I can get that to a 4 billion. Do you see where I'm coming from? So I can make $1 billion at Tottenham, but I can make 3 billion at Newcastle. So what's more attractive? So that's the idea, and I think that you could argue on the other side of that to balance it out. Scott Munn coming in, have some dealings with the City Group and being in that period around the City Group. Is there an opportunity to start bringing in? Is that investment from QSI coming? We don't know. We're speculating, but it's something that we hope. But we know from the footballing side, it's the hope that keeps you and it's the hope that kills you, as we always say. So it's a bloody nightmare, isn't it, lads?
It is a nightmare. And I'm looking at maybe Newcastle. You mentioned Newcastle. I'm looking at Newcastle. I know they're state funded and everything like that, but I don't think they're acting like a state funded club. And I think they've come in and they've basically shown Daniel Levy how to run a footballing side of a football club. And they've completely embarrassed him, in my opinion, with the way that they've grown in such a short space of time. And he needs to take a look at that and what they're doing. They particularly plan each player that they're going to bring in for the system that Eddie Howe wants to play and the gaps in the squad that they need to be doing. And what do? We spend 60 million on Richarlison when we're desperate for centre-backs and wing-backs. I mean, it makes absolutely no sense.
Again,
so
Just quickly on that, Ben, sorry to interact with you there, but quickly on that, why is that the case? Because they've got Dan Ashworth, and Dan Ashworth, where did he used to be at Brighton, right? And then went through England, and now he's at Newcastle. But look at the Brighton structure. Again, what Sim said right at the beginning of the show, what I've been banging a drum, a culture, a plan, a vision. You know, Cracker's said it, we've said it so many times, you boys said it on your show, we've said it on last one, the Spurs show. It's about, you know, if a manager leaves, the next one can come in and it's seamless, it becomes seamless because you're playing the right way. If we brought Poch back tomorrow, we play a 4-2-3-1, we've got a doggy coming in. He's a wing back. We've got Perisic, a wing back. Pedro Porro, a wing back. I mean, this is mental. We're changing the whole cycle again. As Sim said, again, the decisions making. Look, it is about wiping the slate clean on the footballing side and going again. And we're going. And this is where it's painful. Poch said all them years ago, we're going to go for a painful rebuild. Maybe this is the painful rebuild that he was talking about. Maybe we're halfway there. We've got £230 million worth of players out on loan, guys. I mean, if that doesn't smack red flag, we can't move these players on. We've bought them in for massive transfer fees. We can't. This is a recruitment nightmare. Somebody needs to get hold of that. It's, for me, that is the clearest, biggest indicator of what needs to change on the footballing side. Is somebody coming in with a clear understanding of the players that we bring in, the structure that we're playing under through the academy, through the under 17s, 18s, and 21s. All the way through to the first team. What are we doing in that structure? Who is running that? And then you hear stories about Paratici obviously having to move on because of his, his dealings or whatever it is abroad. Then you start thinking, hang on, is there going to be repercussions in the future for us? Maybe down the line. I mean, you just don't know. There's still so many questions that need to be answered over that side of things. But you know. The footballing side has been neglected, and it is something needs to change definitely on that side.
Yeah, when you're looking at the state of the squad right now, first we don't have a manager, don't have a sporting director, and in terms of the actual playing staff, I went through it the other day. I counted about 19 players where either their future's up in the air, leaving at the end of the season, or they're just simply not good enough to be in this squad. And that's 19 out of 25 or 26 players, which is, how would you let it get to this? How?
30. There's 36, Ben, I think. I counted the other day. There's 36 players that potentially could be classed as first team players. So if they all come back from their respective loans and all that sort of stuff, I don't know what you would count in terms of are they good enough or not. But I just went, right, how many people are in the first, would you class as first team? We've got Reguilon still plays for Tottenham. Yeah. Reguilon, like, you know, we've got a doggy, you know, we've got Lo Celso, we've got Dembele who's about to pick up a championship Serie A. You know, this is madness, isn't it? It's, exactly how do you let it get to this? You've got directors of football that have been and gone. We've had 6 directors of football since we were the first club to appoint a director of football in the Premier League, and have they worked? You know, you might get a couple of good signings on it. Where Baldini that sold our best ever player to Real Madrid for a record transfer fee, you know, and brought in the Magnificent Seven. How did that work out? You know, you had Damien Comoli, for example, who came in and then fancied to go to Liverpool, so he wanted to go off really quickly. You had the board and the club appoint Jacques Santini as our manager, and within 10 minutes he'd gone, and then we ended up with Jarl, which by the way was brilliant and a fluke, but ultimately it was a fluke. I mean, this is just constant, and this is where, you know, my being lenient on the decision making because of the financial footing of the club or the business side of things. But the footballing decisions are an absolute joke, and they need to change. And again, maybe I'm being too being too nice, but Scott Munn has been appointed. We can't pillage the guy, and he started his job yet. Maybe this is the start of the change. But I mean, Sim, what do you think? I mean, I had no idea.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of see what you mean. You want to give Scott Munn a chance, and to give him a chance, you have to kind of allow him to do the role. And if we're calling for the change of the chairman and all this kind of stuff, then maybe that would hinder that. But I just think people have lost trust in all their appointments, all their decision making, and I can understand it after such a long time of the club not moving forward well, especially in recent years. They need to be held accountable for their poor decisions. I do think we should give Scott Munn a chance, obviously, now that he's in the role, to kind of correct the footballing operation. He is director of football operations, so he's going to be in charge of all the footballing side of everything. The new director of football is going to be accountable to him. So hopefully that leads to more separation from Levy for the footballing side. But at this point in time, like, it's kind of has to be a case of I believe it when I see it kind of thing. And I think a lot of fans, even at this point, don't trust that Levy won't be able to stay away from his minute control, which he's got so many yes men around him, Daniel Levy. No one to criticise his opinions and his decision making. He's just got a load of people just basically kissing his ass, it seems, at the moment, and it feeding his ego. And then his ego builds up to a point where he never thinks he's wrong, and will that lead to him overriding Scott Munn in certain decision making because he believes it's better for the football club to go in a certain direction? And even, we've had sporting directors who have grown frustrated with Levy, because they feel like they've held him back and stuff like that, and they end up leaving. Scott Munn, Paul Mitchell, he was great.
Football sucks, but he was brilliant and bringing in some, almost had that Brighton-esque feel of, bringing in players that, we had the Wanyamas and we had Eric Dyer at the time. I know I get battered for that comment now, but back then, £3.5 million was a good signing. You look at Alderweireld, for example, under that, and if you look at that back four that we assembled, in the heyday under Poch, Jan Vertonghen, I think it was 9 million, 11 million for Alderweireld. Danny Rose come from up north, didn't he, from Leeds? I think it was a few million quid.
16 million.
Yeah, and then Carl Walker as well. He come with the other Carl, didn't he? To be fair, on the double deal with Carl Norton and a double deal. And you look at that back four that we put together, the best Premier League defence in that 16-17 season, and it was put together for less than 50 million quid. I don't know, times have changed in terms of that. I just think that our fan base as well, me included in this, I'm not pillaging anyone. It's like if we went and bought a Matoma for 3 million quid, we'd be like, oh, he's not very good, he's rubbish. But now we're like, oh, why can't we go and buy a Matoma for 3 million quid? When we bought Dele Alli for 5 million quid, we didn't know how good he was going to be, but people were like, oh, 5 million quid Dele Alli, classic Levy or whatever, and then bang, he'd become an absolute baller for 2-3 years. Yes, he's gone off the boil now, but this is the thing, and like you said, Crackers, it goes around in cycles. You need to refresh, you need to refresh. We've gone from selling all of our best players, but Keane, Berbatov, Defoe's, Crouches, Bales, Modric's, the list goes on and on. Van der Vaart left the football club. We were selling all our best players to literally shutting down and selling no one. I think the best player that we've lost in the last 5 years or so is Carl Walker for 50 million quid. We haven't sold one of our best. And Ericsson, but again, most of the fan base, even then, Ben, when Ericsson was going, was like, "I'll get him out. He's not interested. We don't want him anymore. Whatever." The point being is that we could have sold Ericsson 2 seasons before that for 90 million, 100 million quid. We could have sold Dele Alli for 120 million at the time, and these numbers definitely they could have gone for, but we didn't do it. But we've gone too far the other way, and these are decision making. Like they come back to your point, Ben, Sim. Sorry, they don't understand the football inside. That actually, it's time to move a player on. Like it's time to move Jaap Stam on at Manchester United. It's time to move on at David Beckham, even at his heyday. They don't understand it's time to do that. Liverpool sold their best player in Coutinho. And then the next thing they know, they're getting 96 points total in Premier League and winning absolutely everything. 2 Champions League, a Champions League against us, a Champions League final. But if we'd sold Harry Kane to Manchester City 2 seasons ago, an absolute uproar. Now we're sitting there going, he's got 1 year left on his contract. Was that a good decision? Do you see where I'm coming from? So it is about decision making, and people need to be decisive. And you can only make good decisions if you know who you are, know what you want to be, and know where you're going. And in business, in football, in life, if you don't have that, you just drift. And if you drift, you get people like us for an hour and a half or whatever talking about the problems and the mess that we're in, because we're just drifting. We drift a bit of driftwood on a river, and hopefully something might happen. Hopefully we might be able to nick a trophy. Hopefully we might get in the top 4. And quite frankly, it's just not good enough.
Yeah, and you talk about before when you're talking about Scott Munn about maybe giving Levy another chance and all this kind of stuff, but what's the old saying, like, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me? What's fool me 22 times? How many shames does that go into? What's the saying for that? Like, shame me 22 times, you know what I mean? It's just an absolute joke, and he's not fit for purpose anymore. That's just the honest truth of it. And yeah, I think we've put our points across fairly well for that one.